Welcome to the Family Business Podcast, hosted by George Tucker, the podcast by our people for our people. This is your opportunity to thrive, gain knowledge, and understand the impact on our communities. It's time to engage in dialogues about solutions and remedies for us. Every week, we talk about topics from political and civic issues to legal matters to youth empowerment as we awake our social consciousness. Lean into the conversation because we believe in our significance. So without further ado, get ready for the Family Business Podcast with your host, George Tucker, the podcast where your voice matters.
Welcome to another edition of Family Business. I'm your host, George Tucker. I am excited because at this point in time, we're dealing with all of the off-season stuff going on with college football, all of the spring practices, all of the heavy recruiting. We're dealing with the deals that are going on in the NFL, and all of us, well, at least most of us, are devout football fans, whether it be high school, college, or pro. And tonight, I just wanted to delve a little bit into something that greatly affects our community, whether it be because of our high school affiliations, because of our collegiate affiliation, or because of our fan affiliation to the NFL. There are some things that are transpiring that have developed just recently in the world of college football, which expands both north and south, south being high school, north being NFL. There's some real fallout, and it either is going to be something that we are ready for because we're going to deal with it. I'm talking about as our community. I'm talking our children. I'm talking if it's not our children, it's our teams from high school. This NIL thing, this transfer portal. And for me, it's really personal as it relates to the fact that I'm wanting to see how our HBCUs are either going to fare or fail as a result of the effect of the NILs and the transfer portal. We do know how Power Five, we do know how we call them mid-majors, but I don't know what they're called anymore because now I think the Power Five is a Power Four in that the Pac-12 has fallen apart. But living in our community, and that's Southeast Louisiana, I'm talking from the Mississippi line all the way down to New Orleans, down 55, up 55, depends on which way you're looking. If you're looking up, you're from New Orleans. If you're looking down, you're from Kentwood or Tangier Horse somewhere. And the whole area, I'm talking certain parts of 12 and 10, interstates that is, that Southeast Louisiana and South Central Louisiana is really rich in football players. And there has been a change in the way kids are being recruited. And there's another thing that I'm becoming aware of. I knew about, but I didn't really have a connection with until this year when my son started playing this 7-on-7 stuff. And the impact of it it's almost like AAU in basketball, where kids are literally being heavily recruited based on the way they perform in 7-on-7. And I used to not have a whole lot of appreciation for the accuracy of what a kid may do on the field with pads versus what a kid does out here with shorts and a mouthpiece. But I kept basing it on what football was when I played college football from 1987 to 1991. Not to mention what football was when I played it in high school from 83 to 86. Football is no longer that. what it takes to be a star now is not what it took to be a star then. Uh, what it takes to be elite at a position now is not what it took back then. At one time during my era, when we talk about HBCUs, I mean, and I played ball at Southern, the SWAC, of course. There was a well-known fact that if you were really good at your school, what I mean by that is not just really good in practice, as in if you were a star on your team in the SWAC in the 80s, and you were a star for 2 years and you did not get injured or did not, for whatever reason, lose the opportunity to complete your college career, you were highly likely to go to NFL camp. And I have to remember also when I'm being a little rough on these kids now and being a little rough on our SWAC programs and our HBCUs, I have to remember back when I was in college, there were 14 rounds in the NFL draft. There were 14 rounds in the 92 draft. 14. So when you look up and now, when we brag about how many of the people got drafted when I was a college athlete and how few even get to sniff an opportunity at even getting a call to go to a camp now, there's 7 rounds now. And who's to say that many of the people that got the opportunities back during my era would have had a chance to sniff a camp? But that's not the only thing that's changed. The rules have changed. Defense, there's only so much violence they're going to put up with on defense. So much of the things that we used to rely on was fear, intimidation, and follow through on each. It had a lot to do with whether a player would be willing to put themselves in compromised position just to catch a ball. That fear has been removed now. So when you try to undervalue what happens in 7-on-7, is because you're still applying it in the old football where you could hit people and that would clearly change the dynamic as to whether they would be so willing to catch a ball. Well, with that being removed, you can almost count on what you see in 7-on-7 just based on talent, based on speed, based on recognition, based on awareness, but because they're not going to get hit on Saturday either. And if a cat does hit him too hard or hit him too high, he's ejected from the game. So, yeah, I was just speaking on this 7-on-7 dynamic that, that circuit now is where these major colleges go to look for kids with a certain aptitude based on those 7-on-7 performances. And those are the same kids, and in most instances, that show up at these Under Armour and On3 recruiting deals and all of these rival showcases. Rivals, all these are the evaluating services, scouting services that, this thing is morphed into big business, high school football, and big business for the children. And so with the NIL and these collectives, the highest bidder, I guess that's a safe way to say it, is going to be the best suitor for kids services. Well, that's on the front end. On the back end of that, we have the transfer portal. And there are 2 periods, sort of like signing dates, like they have early signing date and a regular signing date. Early signing date is December. The regular signing date is February. Well, the early transfer portal window is January, and the second one is in May. So there's twice a year that people can find new talent if they can afford to attract new talent. Well, now it seems that the HBCUs depends on how they posture themselves, can be competition for the JUCOs. When I say JUCOs, junior colleges, meaning that there may be a need to change the strategy to secure some of these high three, 4, and 5-star athletes. Maybe not 5-star, but a lot of these 3s and 4s, a lot of 3-star, basically. I think that may be a safer way. If they were to target these 3-star athletes that are getting offers to some of these, what we used to call mid-majors, here in Louisiana and Mississippi, I guess that would be like Southern Miss, Louisiana Tech, ULM, ULL, Tulane. And when I say mid-major, those are programs that aren't a part of those big 4 conferences, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the SEC. So those are the schools that may be in a position to give enough of an incentive from their collectives to be able to attract these 3-star athletes. I'm going to just really have this conversation based on the three stars, because 4 stars, that's close enough to 5 for them. If they have, a decent enough upside, they probably end up fare up just as well. Depends on what the school that's recruiting them needs. But these 3 stars, these are people that either need a little more development to be considered elite, or there's a size challenge, or they don't have a size challenge or a development challenge. There's a competition question that they had in high school. Someone may not respect the level of competition they played on. So these 3 stars, or there may be someone, like, once again, this year they may have just been underexposed, or they want a team that didn't win. But anyway, it appears that with these 3 stars, that if the HBCUs were to, if they are going to get these kids, those kids may want to know that if they come there and they do well after 2 years, whether the program would have a problem with them moving on, so that they may be able to sell to these kids and market to these kids that you come here, you play immediately. You play immediately and you do very well. The football team does very well. So, and if there's enough that's being offered for you to go, then we won't stand in your way. So there seems to be where both of them may benefit, because otherwise, if the HBCUs don't create a draw for these, they only have to hope that they get kids out of transfer portal. Now, oftentimes with this transfer portal, they didn't need a transfer portal to get the kind of kids that come down to the SWAC or to HBCUs. Those were the same kinds of kids that were coming down before the transfer portal. Because transfer portal, with this new sense, if the coaches on an HBCU really take a good look at it, those kids that are in the transfer portal are going to be the top tier and probably the bottom tier. It's going to be I would think there'd be very little in between. Top tier, because they're testing the market like free agency, and bottom tier, they're hoping to find somewhere that needs something, and they need something so badly they'll take just about anything other than what they have. So that's usually the opposite ends of the spectrum that show up in the portal. So I think that the portal will not be a great place for our HBCUs, or it hadn't seemed to have been so far. I think that the inviting them out of high school to come there with an opportunity to play. And I forgot there's another category of kids that I think that the HBCUs are great for, is a kid who, up until he leaves high school, it's sort of hard to peg what position that kid may play because they may be a tweener or a both side of the ball football player that's a little bit too much athlete to peg them until they begin to form skills that suggest they could play a position, because they played both ways, because they had talents and gifts. But until those things are married with work and become skills, it's sort of hard for someone looking and someone coaching and someone training them to try to tell them what position to play. That sort of works itself out based on what they like, what opportunities they get, and how much time they have to turn those opportunities and what they like into performances that a coach can use, or how long they're willing to sit patiently for whatever it is they chose that nobody really sees the future in but them. That's another kid that needs to go to a smaller school, an HBCU, because if they're talented, they'll have more of an opportunity to work on their crafts during a game versus in practice. So I am a strong believer that now, for the kids, our kids coming out of high school, that if you go to a school and create a value, then you can see what type of offers are being made for your services. Because if you look at the way it's working now, these power four schools that are intent on winning, are intent on making huge improvements in a short period of time, are pirating the whole football landscape. A person that don't get out of high school, I know the headlines are the boys that leave Alabama and go to schools, or the boys that leave Ohio State and go to schools, but those are the headlines. I think that the belly of this and the core group of kids that have made the portal work are those that they find at Division 2, Division 3 schools, are mid majors that transfer up. I don't think there's been a whole lot of success of those that transfer down. So I say that to say, family, we have an opportunity to win twice. A kid that needs more film and more game situations and more big plays in something other than scrimmages and 7-on-7 may go to one of these schools and really develop this craft. And from there, these other schools are always looking. They can always get in the portal after being clear on how many people have an interest in them, not getting in the portal to look, because they may end up losing all the way. It may be a crapshoot, because once you get in the portal, that I'm not too certain, I don't believe that the team that you left has to take you back if nothing happens for you. Then what happened was something happened to you, as in now you're without a home. So I think that a very good strategy to get involved in this NIL, and when I say NIL, that's name, images, and likenesses, and these collectives, which is where a university gets its most enthused and infused donors, boosters, alumni, to create a fund for them to go out and entice, encourage, and enrich kids to come to the university. So, and for those that don't know, and you just happen to be here, understand that there are children that are getting 7 figures to go and play 1 year at a university. And those 7-figure paydays can happen annually, depending on whether that person causes the school to believe that he is still testing waters, or that once he got there, it got to be where they do valuations on him, and his valuation went way up. And that still doesn't ensure them that he's going to stay here, because there may be a school that will pay him. There may be a collective that will be able to change his allegiance. So let's not all believe that all kids that have a lot of talent, or all kids that have these freakish measurables, or all kids who've had an outstanding high school career, because oftentimes the career isn't with a kid who has the physical measurables. So in all those instances, if that person believes that athlete believes that they have what it takes, and that if they were given an opportunity, that they would be able to dominate on some level at such a great fashion that now the Power Four are no longer going to wait on their kids. They're going to come get him. So that's your second bite at the apple. You want to get to these schools, create a really clear value, and test the market. I think that strategy will allow children to go somewhere and develop on the field, or go somewhere and shine. They may not have to develop. They may have to just increase their stock value. And at that point, what they'd hoped for, they've worked for. And there's always going to be suitors when you have somebody, because there's always a coach on the hot seat. Every conference has a couple coaches that are on the hot seat. So I just think that that's a great strategy. Tonight is all about that little area of things that I have a little bit experience with, and I think that it has a much bigger effect on us than we know. Because if we don't know how things work, we may encourage kids to do something because we love the fact of him going to a big school, but 80% of kids we send out there, they don't play. At least half of them don't play a down. At least half of the kids that go to these big schools, when I say at least half, I may venture to say 65% of them don't play a single down. They'll get the rings, they get the trips, they get the memories. They don't get the letters, they don't get Letterman status. So I think that until you are assured that you're going to play somewhere else, just go play somewhere. Play somewhere so well that you can play anywhere because of what you actually put on tape. That would be the thing that I would most recommend to the average parent, not the one who has a kid who's top 3 or top 4 at their position, even if it's just in the state, because they may develop into whatever. But understand that if a kid goes to these Power Fours and doesn't get on the field quick enough, then that kid is never going to play, because they're always bringing new kids by way of high school advancement or transfer portal. So if you haven't found a place for you to get in the mix early, you may end up getting mixed up and run out, because the portal, people are building teams from the portal. and they're just getting youth that if they can develop them, they may be somebody just in case somebody gets hurt. But they're a lot of teams' focus is on the portal. And remember, with smaller schools, I haven't really seen where the portal has helped them to identify, secure, and then now benefit from a person that came from way up and came way down. I haven't seen it. I'm not talking about those that made play. I'm talking about where they made such a difference, or the difference that was anticipated by the smaller school, specifically the HBCUs, what's available to them. So I think that a great strategy would be to market to the parents of 3-star athletes, the market to them the commitment that will be made to letting the best play. And if he's the best, he start playing young. And once a kid plays young, then if their aspirations are to go up, when I say go up, to move up to the really well-funded Power 4 programs. And and if there are some real questions as to why there was such a conversation about this particular topic, for the last almost 30 years, I volunteered in different ways at different schools or in different organizations or in different families' lives to help kids around my area, which is whether it be from St. Helena Parish, Tangier Parish, or surrounding parishes, to help kids receive an opportunity to get an education the same way I did. I went to college on a football scholarship, and that scholarship opportunity led to me getting a degree, and that the relationships that were both made with leaders in the community and leaders on campus helped me to get my seat in law school, and that seat in law school helped me to get this seat tonight. So I have a pretty clear link between the little opportunities that we get for our kids as it relates to athletics and the fulfillment of some dreams and aspirations and changing some of the narratives in our families. So I've seen a lot of kids go to these bigger schools and get lost. I've seen a lot of kids go to these smaller schools and not take it serious enough and just end up another number. But in this era that has been now created where kids can actually be paid, I highly recommend that they go somewhere where they establish a value rather than trying to place a value on or place a price on somebody, bring them there, and then they try to establish a value, because inevitably the price is going to be a whole lot lower without an established value than it would be after an established value. So, and that's for those who just only worried about what they're going to get out of it. The best thing to do is make sure you put something in somewhere so that you can have a way of evaluating, anticipating what it is that you may be able to procure for your services. So I'm in contact with a lot of coaches all the time, try to see how they feel about this new era of football, because some of the coaches, although they make $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year, are still talking about how paying the children changed the game. They don't want to talk about how paying coaches in many states, the coach is the highest paid public official, period. When I say official, those if they're working at a university, it's still a state job. And even more concerning for me, and that's just from our perspective, is that a coach, the same coaches that are doing a whole lot of complaining about this transfer portal and the NILs and how the transfer portal doesn't allow for kids having the loyalty. Coaches can be working here today, and based on money, being offered more money, they'll leave tomorrow. But there's a different standard when a kid leaves based on money, based on what he thinks, what he's going to receive is going to do to change his life and his family's narrative. The same coaches, I mean, as a group that are dead set against how free and how freely kids can move to programs, forget how freely coaches do move to programs. And I'm talking after they recruited a kid, got him to sign there, and before he even sets foot on campus, the coach is gone after all the assurances he made during the recruiting process. So I am more of a player's person. I just know that this is a business. College athletics is a business. And I say all the time when I talk to parents, when they start getting really committed to a school, I say, well, let me ask you this, Mom, Dad. If your son were getting drafted, what number would you want him to be? How many parents want their son to be the number one pick overall? How many even care where the organization is? How many parents are friends, are fans of a person, care about what city he's going to play in? Most people are more concerned about what number he's going to go. Is he going to be the first pick? Is he going to be the second pick? Now, what's attached to first pick and second pick is money. The highest paid person is required that it be the number one pick. So when we start talking about kids coming out of high school, and there be someone that says, hey, look, if you were coming out of college and you had all these offers on the table, IBM, Texas Instrument, Apple, all of these are great. If it's for your services and it's a job, you're probably going to try to go to the place that gives you the best benefit package, whether it be stocks, however they packaged it, you're going to probably take the best benefits package. So now that the NILs and collectives have come into place, I'm a proponent of the kids and the family treating it like it's a job offer, and that you look at the best benefit package, whether it be LSU, whether it be SMU, whether it be Ohio State, whether it be North Carolina State. If now these children are able to be paid for their services, I don't really see how it's still about what school a kid goes to as much as it is about what benefits package the program is willing to invest into that kid. Because you could get hurt any day and all that stuff is going out the window. The new thing now is NIL, not NFL. NFL is between the kid and his commitment to fitness, uh, his commitment to discipline and all that good stuff after college. So the coaches' conversation about how many NFL players they develop, those seem to be a lot less. They seem to have a lot less to do with what really needs to be talked about. The same thing coaches talk about when they get ready to pick a school is the same thing a kid needs to talk about. It's different now, but parents are still in that mode, and they're allowing coaches and other influences to keep them in a mode that tennis parents aren't in that mode, golf parents aren't in that mode, baseball. They want their son to get drafted as high as he can and go to the team that's going to pick him the highest. They don't, college for these kids is no longer about school on that level. When I say on that level, these Power Four collectives, it's not about school. It's not about a degree. You're going to work somewhere, and the question becomes, who is putting together the best benefits package for your services? The new thing is, let's talk about NIL and leave NFL up to me, because 98 to 99% of these kids are never going to see NFL camp. It's more than that, because if in order for it to be 99%, they would have to say 1 out of 100 of these kids. That's not so, because they got 100 on the team. So that's not so. It's not 1 out of 100. So it's less than 1% of these kids will ever see a professional locker room. So when we're talking about where they're going to go to school, because you got to go back again. A lot of kids, since the beginning of the time, have always been told, go wherever you can get a scholarship. Okay. Now, that's because a scholarship will pay for them to go to school. Well, with NIL and collectives, who's offering the best situation for you? And coming from where I come from, and coming from most where these athletes come from, when we say best situation, we're not talking about where it's located. We're not talking about some environment in academia outside of the football dorm and the game atmosphere. It's work. And you'll be made clear to understand that when you get there and you put a $10 million a year coach's job in jeopardy. He fires you. So make sure that now that we are fully aware of and understand what this is, it's imperative that we move forward knowing how to use this to our advantage. Like when coaches are getting bought out, they can be terrible coaches, get bought out. They can get fired and get $34 million. They can get fired and get $70 million. Just know that when you're sitting here thinking about the NIL and collectives, parents that I see all the time, your son could get injured. What has he benefited? And I'm not talking about not getting education. I'm talking about the football side of it. I'm not saying that kids shouldn't get an education. I'm saying there's an education on every campus. So he can get the education wherever he goes. But there's not a 6-figure check on every campus. There's not a 7-figure check on every campus. And that campus that he got that 7-figure check from has an academic side. So these are the things that I think need to stay in the conversation when we're talking about our kids. And that needs to always be a part of the conversation, because you're going to end up being convinced that to have that conversation and to have that be a very important part of the decision-making process, you're going to be convinced that that's being greedy, being selfish, being something other than prudent. Because the coach is not only negotiating, these coaches have hired agents. It's big business. Understand, college sports is big business. So approach it like you have a commodity. And make sure you know the value of the commodity, because you're so closely related on the development of that commodity, so that you won't be so impressed about all of the amenities at a university, because that's not what they're bringing him there for. It's up to him to get there when he gets there. But he's been brought there to make their investment a 100x. So that little scholarship they gave him, they're expecting to make at least 100 times that off him. Ridiculous. So that's what I want the parents that maybe in my viewing audience to understand, that don't be made to feel guilty for doing the right thing. Because before the collectives and the NILs, they've been paying these boys. So who do you look at? Do you look at the kid for accepting money? Or do you look at the booster for making it where the money's there for him to accept? Why do we never know who they are? Whenever there's a big fallout, we don't know who the booster is. We just know who the kid is. So that doesn't have to happen anymore. You don't have to go in the back room and get the little envelope or the handshake after the game where you slide your hand off and you got all the money. Get it at the door, because it has your name on it. Parents, don't get caught up and duped by people passing judgment on you for something they never had opportunity to have to worry about. They only place value on their opportunities, while they probably place blame on the way you may choose to exercise yours. So let's be aware before we be put on notice. Let's be aware before we get put on notice. We have the commodity. You have the commodity. Make sure you know the value by being involved in so many steps of the way that you can assess the value. Even though you may not be able to give appraisal, you can do your own assessment. Don't let your decisions or the way people appraise your decision be more important than you knowing how to make sure they appraise your commodity, which is your son, or your brother, or your nephew, or the kid you have guardianship over. Stay involved. I've seen, I've heard, I've witnessed, I've experienced some crazy things in my efforts to help these children to realize and obtain value.
Thanks for tuning into the Family Business Podcast with host George Tucker, the podcast by our people for our people. Join us every week for your opportunity to thrive, gain knowledge, and awake your social consciousness. It's our goal to bring solutions and remedies for us. Every week, we talk about topics from political and civic issues to legal matters to youth empowerment as we find ways to galvanize our communities. So until next time, understand your voice matters and it deserves to be heard. God bless. From the Family Business Podcast and host, George Tucker.